Welcome to Mental Health and You. This podcast brings you the best information and advice from across the Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust. Every fortnight we will hear from one of our specialist areas, be it school and parent support, the Recovery College, wellbeing or research.
Hello and welcome to the NSFT podcast. This time it's been hosted by the Recovery College, and we're going to just have a conversation around the journey from firstly being a student all the way up to being a peer tutor on the courses. My name is Danny and I am one of the staff coordinators at Recovery College, soon to be in a new role that will involve more promotion and partnership working, and I also teach on a few different courses as well. So I have three people with me today. I have Elizabeth and Mark and Holly. I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourselves. Elizabeth?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth. I'm a peer tutor. Since then, I've gone on to become a peer support worker and then used my experiences working for the Trust, using my lived experience to become a staff tutor for the Recovery College as well.
Thank you. And Holly?
Hello, I'm Holly, and I'm also a peer tutor with the Recovery College. Looking forward to taking more opportunities and experience as I go down the road.
And Mark?
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm also a peer tutor at Recovery College. Done it for a few years now, and also a student before that.
Thank you. So what we'll just kind of look at now, perhaps if you're happy to start, Elizabeth, is what perhaps were your first impressions of the Recovery College? Was there anything you expected, or was it very different to those expectations?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was just really up for it because I loved school and university, and then it was like, oh, there's a college, yeah, how can I get there as soon as possible? So yeah, I really loved it, and I found it really challenging, and like the content of the course is really challenging, but in a really great way. So I just had this great fear of people thinking I was academically intelligent because I got bullied for that at school. And I went on a course about strengths, and I put my hand up when they said who's academically intelligent, and then they said yes, well that's fine, but there are 9 other kinds of intelligence, and I just loved that. And then they just proceeded to tell me all about these different kinds of intelligence. So that was just such an awesome way to be to like overcome a fear and then just be challenged straight away as well afterwards, which is really great.
Brilliant, thank you. And you said, so that was one of the challenges. Any other sort of challenges you found you experienced early on in attending Recovery College?
Yeah, I just loved being in a classroom so much. So I felt like I was really, really in my element and just really wanting to learn and just soak up everything that I was being taught. But just some real massive eureka moments for me along my recovery. Like when I was told that there were no such things as a negative emotion, that revolutionized my world. And from then, I feel like being a student at the Recovery College was the foundation for my recovery. I just loved it.
Brilliant. I mean, that's quite a statement to say it was the foundation for recovery.
Yeah.
Glad to hear.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. If an alien came to Earth and said, I can take away everything except one thing that helped you, I'd say, leave me the Recovery College.
Thank you. And how about yourself, Mark? What were perhaps your first impressions of the Recovery College?
My initial impression was I was slightly terrified. I was kind of incredibly nervous, and I remember just being happy that I got to the place. I remember really distinctly both tutors being really warm and welcoming and sort of like drawing me into it. And I felt even more connected when I sort of realised there was a learned and a lived experience. So there was like a tutor that kind of was in my boat or in a similar camp. I was still terrified, so I still ran out halfway through. But it made enough of an impression that I came back and actually got back into it. And the people who were in the course as well, they really helped. The people attending it with me, they supported me, and yeah, between all of that, it kind of really made a good first stroke second impression.
Brilliant. And I'm obviously glad that you did come back.
Yeah. I pushed through my nerves.
Yeah. And how about yourself, Holly?
Well, I think I'd been involved with a couple of other sort of group learning environments when it comes to mental health, so more of the adult side. And so when I came to the Recovery College, I think I sort of had the same expectation of that was sort of the environment I was walking into. But actually, it was completely different. Just like Marcus said about the staff tutor and the peer tutor, really having those different roles was a new aspect for me. And very much so when I heard the peer speak, I was like, wow, this is somebody who is, I would say, used Mark's thing. We're all in the same ocean, even if we're in different boats. It's that type of thing, really, isn't it? So coming into that environment, but as well, actually being with other students and that shared learning, really sparking off with each conversation or discussion that was happening. That was something I hadn't expected at all, and it was a very welcomed thing, to be honest.
Thank you. Because quite a few of you have mentioned it already, that I think it's fair to say that the peer element, specifically having a peer tutor with their lived experience, makes a huge difference on all of the courses that you wouldn't traditionally perhaps have in other sessions. So, Elizabeth, what would you say your kind of first impressions were of the fact that the Recovery College co-delivered courses with a peer tutor?
Well, first of all, for my first couple of courses, I didn't know that there was a peer tutor and a staff tutor. So I thought that they were both staff members. And I just remember being like, wow, they're so open, so open about their experiences. And then later on, it kind of cracked me up that I didn't realise that. But it did have a huge impact on me. I felt it just brought a sense of safety to the classroom, and just a sense of kind of thinking about Chime, like definitely thinking about empowerment. Like I was just in awe of the peer tutors. It was like they were like, it was incredible seeing how far people could go. And I always thought that I could become well enough for a depressed person. I just had no idea. They just showed me that you can just become and thrive, become what you want to become and thrive as much as you want to thrive. So I feel, that they were really cool.
Thank you. And would you be happy just to tell people what you meant by Chime, just for those that perhaps haven't?
Oh yeah, sorry, that did. So Chime is there was a study done in 2011. And it was kind of like looking at everything that was working in mental health recovery, and 5 things were found to be common in like every study, and it spelled out Chime. So connectedness, hope, identity, meaning and purpose, and empowerment. And so looking at those peer tutors, I was like, wow, yeah, I could see how empowered they were, and the thought that could be possible for me felt amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you. How about yourself, Mark? I know you've kind of touched upon it already, perhaps the presence of a peer tutor there, but did that make sort of things different for you, perhaps than other courses you've been on, or what you were expecting?
Yeah, it felt like a sort of completely different way of learning about mental health. Really, the whole idea of the group also being part of the voice of the whole thing, that was something I hadn't really experienced. It wasn't like here is something we're teaching you. It's almost like a group learning, and I was sort of aware of how the tutors sort of navigated that, and the peer tutor being able to like put direct empathy and experience onto the course they were teaching. Going, well, when I was doing it the first time, I found this difficult, or I found this useful. That really helped as well. And I think also I kind of started to sort of have a different view of staff tutors, because I think maybe it was just a fact of them working together, but a lot of the staff who were doing staff tutoring were quite open about their emotional mental health experiences, as well as and like in a similar way to what Elizabeth said, I started sort of thinking, well, the crossover there's not really too much difference here. They both have a lot of like learned experience, but they're both very open about their lived. And it was a totally different way of learning about like mental health, or really anything for me. Sort of I learned about facilitating through that. That was a particularly new thing.
Thank you. And how about yourself, Holly?
Yeah, I think very similar to Elizabeth and Mark. I think that relatability, I hadn't experienced that before, because you have someone speaking to you about these different things in mental health, and you think, well, have you had any experience of this? Do you know what you're speaking about? But being able to have someone there and you're hearing those experiences, and you're thinking, wow, that's similar, or that's exactly the same as what I'd gone through, and having that relatability actually, I think, inspired hope within me, because I saw, just as Elizabeth said, these people had, I say made it, but they'd actually made the best out of the situations they'd gone through and was able to use that for good. And to me, that held incredible meaning and purpose. And I know once I started on that journey myself, just as Elizabeth said, it was empowerment that was really shown from them that inspired me to get my own empowerment through the role as well.
Brilliant. And adding to that as well, I always find myself actually that echoing everything you've said, and in addition, I always find it sort of adds an air of authenticity that you perhaps wouldn't necessarily have were peer tutors not present. And as Mark said, I think it does help to sort of break down barriers quite a bit between sort of sharing your own experiences, and also that kind of balance between perhaps what people that use services and people that are staff. Really good way to break those barriers down and have those two roles that work in harmony with each other. So I appreciate you. You've all been on lots and lots of courses. You've all taught on lots of different courses as well. So it might be a more difficult question to answer, or at least pin down to one course. But Elizabeth, what course would you say for you that you went on had the most impact or was most memorable?
So I think I'd been going to the Recovery College for about a year, and was starting to think about things in a really kind of like really broad way. And then I did the How to Tell Your Story course. And it was the first time that I was asked to put it all in one written story. And for me, that was an incredible course. And like that piece of work was really like the foundation. I felt like I had a solid foundation from which to explore my recovery from there on in. But I think the one course that had the most impact on me as well was the compassion course, because that's the one I taught. And I taught with a psychological therapist who I still today think is one of the most wisest, kindest people. And so like every time we talked together, I was sitting at the desk like writing down everything he was saying, because it was so profound. So and yeah, I just talked with him for 2.5 years. So it really bolstered my recovery, and I just, it's such a beautiful experience.
Brilliant. So for you, certainly How to Tell Your Story and the and the compassion course, which is making a return, isn't it, to the title, or it has made a return?
Yeah, we just finished teaching it this week, so
Brilliant.
Hopefully we'll be able to do another course in person in the spring, hopefully as well to do it online as well, because some people can't come to classrooms. So yeah.
Good point. Thank you. How about yourself, Mark? Are there any sort of courses or a particular course that had the most impact with you?
I think for me, it was kind of going through sort of as many as I could. There were bits that picked up that kind of really resonated with me. So like when I did the Living Well with Hearing Voices, there was something which I now know was reframing brought into the idea, which I can still use, which I found about a different relationship to what I'm hearing and experiencing. I think a really big one for me, and probably for a lot of people, was ACT, because I have my mental health experience is a lifelong condition. So being presented with the idea of living alongside my condition and learning to live a better life with it, that had never really been an issue or a thought that I'd kind of come across before. So that was a real changer in how I looked at things. And it was really doing a bunch of courses and bits here and bits there really kind of started to make impact, and I actually got me out of being more ill. Like I think by the time I'd done 2 years, I was in such a well place that I was like, I want to volunteer with this place. I want to try and do something with it. I think in a similar way, from doing the course How to Tell Your Story for a few years now, I can still find that I learn things on that course from the people who attend it, and the talks that we all have, and I still find it all useful as well. Like I still implement things from those courses in my daily mental health, and in looking after myself, and like being able to tell my story in a concise and useful way. When I had to go and deal with services at the end of last year, it made everything go so much quicker and so much more smoothly, because I was just able to get across exactly what I need to, and, you know, make it all kind of really smooth to actually get my health kind of worked on quicker and better. So it's, yeah, like they still kind of resonate 6 years down the line, and they're bits to still being useful. But I guess if I had to pin one, ACT was a bit of a game changer, because that was a whole philosophy thing for me.
Are you happy just to explain what ACT is for those that perhaps aren't aware?
So yeah, is it acceptance and commitment therapy? So instead of, say, trying to like negative, you know, instead of trying to neutralize negative thoughts, or, you know, maybe get rid of something, or it was about sort of like learning the things you have and learning how to live with them, and a different way of looking at them. And there's a whole sort of metaphor about passengers, and, you know, and you're the bus driver and you've got passengers and you deal with them in a certain way. And yeah, being able to sort of, I started actually realizing, oh, okay, well, I can put some time aside for my illness. You know, my illness is going to have to react in a certain way, so I can just set that up. When it needs to react in that way, we can just have a chill that time. We can watch some sad films if we have to. You know, I've got my own little process. But it, you know, being able to sort of like decide to put time aside for it and be able to sort of live with it in that way, it's like having a sort of a flatmate, you know. That whole thing was a totally different thing. So ACT's, yeah, more about kind of living with the conditions that you've got, and sort of taking more control of it, and sort of, you know, building a relationship with it. So for me, that was, yeah, incredibly useful. That's kind of what ACT is, I think.
Thank you. And that's actually a course that you've taught on quite a bit, isn't it, Elizabeth? The ACT course.
Yeah, no, ACT is another one of my obsessions. So for my recovery, it was compassion focused therapy and acceptance commitment therapy that really helped. I just love it. It just liberates you from, our culture tells us so many things about our minds that are not true. And so ACT kind of like steps in and fills in the gaps. And when you start like working with the direction of the river, it can feel like really liberating. So it feels liberating to work with your mind rather than against it. So for me, that's what ACT is in a nutshell.
And then I'm just thinking it might be useful for us to just clarify, although we call it acceptance commitment therapy, we
yeah,
from an educational perspective. Are you happy just to say something about that? And then we'll then come to you, Holly.
Yeah, sure. So both compassion focused therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy, when they're not being used in a room with a psychologist or a therapist, you swap out the therapy for the word training. So what we do on the courses is really acceptance and commitment training, but of course it doesn't fly off the tongue as well as acceptance and commitment therapy or compassion focused therapy. So I think that's what's happened there. But yeah, so we definitely be using it as kind of like coaching and training rather than a therapy. It's therapy. You told me this, Danny. It's kind of like therapeutic, but it's not therapy, but it is therapeutic.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And how about yourself, Holly, in regards to perhaps the course that you remember the most, or had the biggest impact for you?
Well, to be honest with you, I would probably, when I first started as a student, I dived head first, and I ended up doing the Living Well with Personality Disorder course. That was incredibly important to me. And I remember just that shared learning that came from everybody, but also the experiences of the peer helped to validate mine, to be honest. And that was actually incredibly important for me at that time, that validation, and that also the ability to see myself being able to move forward from it, because I hadn't been able to do that beforehand. So that, although that was quite a full-on course, it really did kickstart my recovery journey. And I've been thankful that I've been able to work on the co-production of that course that will hopefully be coming back on the timetable very soon. So hopefully for any other person who would be listening to this who would also feel that'd be a good course for them, I would highly recommend it. I think another one would also, I'd say, wellness planning, to be honest with you, because that was also, I would say that was something that was important to me, but actually that was something I had no knowledge of, but actually any sort of understanding of how to even plan my wellness and go forward with it. So being able to go through those things of really how to notice where I am on my recovery journey and where I am in my wellness, and how to boost those things and keep sort of close to my values, which were an incredibly important thing. So learning those things during that course were things that I continue to work upon each and every day, even as a peer tutor.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, like you say, I fully expect the Living Well Personality Disorder course to be really, really busy, really popular, and also the wellness planning course. I think it's yourself actually, Mark, that describes it as a bit of a jack of all trades course. Is that fair to say? It sort of takes a bit of everything and combines it into hopefully a very useful plan.
I also think it was a bit of a toolkit. It's got a bunch of different useful things. I think, I agree completely with what Holly was saying, and I the bit that I kind of found really useful was where I was able to write, if these things happen, I might be affected in this way. If this is happening, here are things that I can do to help. Here are things that you could do to help. So I'm able to show it to somebody else, and I don't, and they can say, oh, I can do these things if you're not right and you're showing these things. And it really kind of, I was able to actually go to my family, go to my friends, and go, if you notice that this is happening, then I'm probably going through this. And so it really was like a literal kit of things that you can kind of get into. That's how I think it's. I should have mentioned wellness plan. It's a good one.
Thank you for that. It's quite useful. Off the back of that, we are actually looking to develop a whole series of small sort of intro / summary videos for every course that people will be able to access and look at, which will give a nice visual introduction to every course as well. So I think that'd be useful for people. So as we said, you've obviously taught lots of courses now. Elizabeth, can you perhaps recall the first time you taught a course and your kind of your experience of that and perhaps how it went?
Yeah, I was so nervous. And so it was the Compassion Focus Therapy course, the Compassionate Mind course that I taught. And 2 weeks before I started teaching, because it uses a lot of kind of like breath work. And I was like, oh my God, I'm such a fraud. I haven't practiced this. So I had like a really intensive 2 weeks of doing the breathing exercises. And lo and behold, they actually really worked for me. So I was just like really inspired by it all. And it just changed my life. So I was really nervous, but it was a really welcoming course, and I learned so much from the staff tutor and all the students on that course. It was a really great experience. And I found, like, I know this maybe sounds backwards, but I felt so vulnerable, and I let the students know at the beginning, like, I'm as anxious as you. And then I just got so much warmth from them. So it was just like a really, really lovely experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think that adds again to the air of authenticity that you have been willing to share, that you're anxious or you feel vulnerable, which echoes probably what a lot of people feel themselves inside, and it helps to create that connection, break down barriers again. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And how about yourself, Mark? Can you recall the first course you taught and perhaps the impact that had on you?
Yeah, I can remember. I mean, the first one I did sort of technically was I went and did a small teaching of 5 ways of wellbeing on the wards, and I sort of got offered the opportunity to do it, and I thought, well, if I'm going to find this position overwhelming in any way, this was probably where I would find that level. So I thought, well, in typical way, I pushed myself into it, and I just kind of went with it, and it was fine. It was absolutely fine. So. But the first real, proper time teaching was doing how to tell your story in person, and both me and the staff tutor, they were very new, and they hadn't done any staff teaching at all. So we actually, I think, with leading up to us both teaching, we took the course 3 times back to back. So we would take it one day in Yarmouth, and then one day somewhere else, and then come and do it in Norwich 2 days later. So by the time we got there, we'd done it a whole bunch, but we were definitely both, both of us were quite novice at it, and it felt nice because we were like both in it together and stuff. And back when we did tea and coffee, we got a little bit excited, and on the last day of the course, when everyone shares, we brought in loads of donuts and things like that. And but it was really nice, like working with someone who, both of us had that kind of excited kind of, we haven't done this before but we're in it together type thing.
And that must have given you, I would assume anyway, quite a different perspective, taking the course quite a few times, because I found on each course is always different. The groups very different. The topics are different. What people share is different. Did that kind of give you a richer overview of the course?
Yeah, I mean, literally in different, going to one place, the course was entirely different. Like a third of the entire course was different, and it involved all these different kind of games and different things, and the way that everyone was interacting was completely different. So it was interesting, seeing it both totally differently done, and then seeing the same thing done but by different people, and just seeing how sort of how the tutors would sort of naturally kind of present it their way. It was still sort of conveying all the same things, but there wasn't a kind of force of who they were trying to be. It was I could see how I could potentially just be natural with it, and I could be myself and deliver the course. So yeah, that was a good insight, being able to sort of see it done by different people.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And how about yourself, Holly, in terms of your first time teaching?
Well, yeah, I think I'd second Elizabeth and Mark on the nervousness, to be honest with you. But actually, I think I knew really from my early days of being a student that was what I wanted to progress towards, was becoming a peer tutor myself. So when it finally was happening, I thought, I felt actually incredibly proud of myself to know that I had made that happen, and that goal that I'd set in my head, however many months before that, had actually come true. I started as a peer during the pandemic, so mine was all online. So I was like, oh, is the technicality side going to be okay? Am I going to say the right things? Am I going to remember it all? Type thing. But I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of amazing people during my peer tutor journey. And yeah, no matter what has happened during it, it's always gone incredibly well. And I've always enjoyed meeting all the different students and using my lived experience to hopefully support their recovery journey.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Holly. We'll perhaps coming to the end of our podcast at the moment, but perhaps just in summary, Elizabeth, looking back upon your time at Recovery College, is there anything in particular that's kind of stood out for you? Is it as kind of a real kind of pivotal moment, or something that kind of really left a lasting kind of thought with you around Recovery College?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, when I did the peer tutor training, there were a couple of peer support workers teaching and going on that course, and that really inspired me to go for that role, and really prepared me for that role as well. I don't know what on earth I'd have done without the Recovery College in my job now. I'm, pulling on its resources all the time. But I think the special thing about the Recovery College for me is that, like, recovery isn't linear. So when I first started at the Recovery College as a student, I noticed that, I was moving more and more forward on my recovery journey, and then became a tutor and was like, moved forward even more. And then after I'd become a PSW, but then I had a crash. So it was almost as if then I went back to the Recovery College as a student again, and that was really nourishing. And it was, I kind of saw it as like a leapfrog, because there was one woman who'd been on one of my ACT courses, and she said that I'd inspired her, and then there she was doing the How to Tell Your Story course, and she was inspiring me, and I thought, I love this. This is just the greatest thing, and where on earth would that happen elsewhere? I can't imagine it. So I think the Recovery College is really, really special like that.
Brilliant. Thank you. And how about yourself, Mark? Has anything kind of stood out looking back throughout your time at Recovery College?
I mean, in a very similar way to what Elizabeth was saying, really, like I got involved in Recovery College only because it had done so much for me that I just wanted to do something. I had no experience in this kind of background, so it was a totally, I just want to get involved and help. And I've been able to be here long enough to experience all the kind of, the sort of best of humanity. A lot of the time you get these incredible people who come into our courses, and, there's things that people propose and ideas and things that are still kind of amazing to me, that I think as a tutor, that's a unique kind of thing that I get back. I'm able to, do these courses multiple times and experience all the different people that attend them and how much they sort of give into it and how much support that they give each other, and just these, really kind of, a lot of us who come here, we're not in our best places, and we're not, we some of us going through real hard times, and I get to see people just naturally support each other in those things, and get to learn about the way certain people think about mental health and all these things. So that, even though it's not one, I know it's not one particular thing, but it's over a period of time, it's one of the most kind of special things that I've got from being a tutor. So yeah, it's weird thinking that I just was going, I just want to help, and then I've been able to get this kind of incredible sort of experience back.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's very. I think it's very reciprocal. It's not necessarily the reason why people do it, but like you say, what people gain through being involved and teach the courses, I think is really important as much as what you're able to give and offer when you teach the courses. How about yourself, Holly?
Yeah, I think I'd second Elizabeth and Mark again, to be honest. I think looking back and seeing all the stepping stones that I've built up along my peer journey is incredible, to be honest with you, and to realise the confidence that I've gained in my abilities has been incredibly important in my own recovery journey. But I know something that I value every single time I tutor or co-produce or do anything is actually the shared learning you get from your colleagues, the students, everybody. So as much as I think you get into a peer tutor role and you sort of think, here I am, and I'm trying to impart my knowledge and my learning and my experiences onto other people to support them, but it still is the other way around, isn't it? You're also learning from them, and as much as you're helping them, they're very much doing the same, and you're going along your recovery journeys together as student and tutor. And that's something I valued all the way along and continue to do so.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the other benefits of Recovery College is that shared learning environment. And also, just before we kind of finish this today, a big congratulations to both Mark and Holly, because you both now were successful, weren't you, in your application to become employed peer tutors within the Recovery College. So a huge congratulations to you both, and it's been quite useful talking about your journey throughout that transition as now from students to obviously where you are, so which is brilliant, and I'm glad to see that. So thank you very much for your time, everyone. It's been really useful for me anyway, to obviously hear more about where you've been and how much you've progressed, and your insights to sharing your experiences in the Recovery College. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much to everyone for listening to NSFT Recovery College, and we hope to see you another time soon. Obviously, you can check our website to look at all of the courses which you're running, and we should hopefully have some more courses starting next term in January, both online and face-to-face. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Please do subscribe. It's free and means the podcast will automatically download every fortnight. Do rate and review Mental Health and You, and follow our social media accounts that are all in the show notes. And more than anything, look after yourself.